what was your first kind of deployment, your first piece of action?
So I've been there about, well, when I first reported to Sea Squadron, Squadron was gone to the Atlanta prison, and when the Marielitos, the Cuban prison riots in Atlanta in the late '80s, and so linked up with them as it was finishing up down there. But that was the first thing I remember seeing was Sea Squadron rolling out to
which is one of the most unique situations in special forces. So I mean, the fact that you had to handle a domestic situation.
Yeah, no, I was beyond my imagination when I saw it. What are we doing? But and then after that one, after I'd been in the squadron about a year, I went to Beirut, Lebanon.
Yeah.
And it was kind of on the heels of a couple of bombings of the embassy, the Marine barracks, and then they captured and assassinated the chief of station, Buckley, in Beirut. So we were sent over there in small detachments. I did a couple tours in Beirut, and then of course Panama came right after that, and then working up for the first Gulf War, and then Somalia, and then narco-terrorism was a big time big thing at the time.
Yeah.
So that kind of drove all of our training and doctrine at the time, being up for that. But I really enjoyed those things because each one of them was unique, and you had to go back and start all over and go, hey, how are we going to do this? And so it really taught you how to think about not only what you're going to do, but why you do it, and more importantly, why not other options. So it made us smarter.
Well, I was going to say it was such a unique time. I think unprecedented and probably unparalleled to this day. That just that block of time, right? That we just got out of what they call a 20-year war, and I mean that was it certainly by no means was easy or straightforward or anything, but it was more of a common continuous threat, whereas you were getting thrown kind of all over the world in very, very different environments, surroundings, civilian situations, engagements, tasks. I mean, it was, you got a potpourri of challenges.
Yeah, it really did kind of broaden your experience. You're looking at a lot of different things and considering, do I want to use a whole squadron? Do I want to use one guy? Do I want to use a team? And so you're learning the breadth and scope of what you're capable of doing.
Crash course in a full arsenal of training.
Yeah.
On the ground, real time.
Yeah.
So then we'll jump to the most known. I mean, Beirut was obviously very, very public, and a horrible situation to be in the middle of. Panama was interesting. But then Mogadishu.
Yep, Somalia. It was the most highly publicized, probably operation of the unit. May very well still be. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, that was the beginning of what we called the JORT cycle. So it was the Joint Operational Readiness Training cycle where we started working across service lines. So we started working with the SEALs, and we started working with the Ranger battalions, and they became a cohort.
Yeah.
So when we would deploy with a portion of Task Force 160th Aviators, a SEAL team, and a company of Rangers. And we paired up, like A Squadron would pair up with the same guys every time, B Squadron would pair up with the same guys every time, C Squadron would pair up with the same guys every time. So.
And what was the first time you did that? Was it Somalia?
Yes, that was the first time that we ever operationally deployed as a team.
And how was that? Was it a little clumsy and awkward?
It was starting out because it was. I mean, I love the guys. I have much respect for all of them.
But everybody's used to working within their own team.
All of us trying to make that
mesh.
Fit.
Yeah.
And at the time, it wasn't well received by any of us. I don't think the unit guys really liked it down at the team level. I don't think the guys in the SEALs liked it. I don't think the Rangers liked it. They would rather stay and do what they like to do, just like we did. 20/20 hindsight, probably the best thing that we ever did was because that's a very formidable package. There's nothing that you can't do with that group of guys.
No.
And we got really close with them. I worked with the guys up at Red Team quite a bit. Actually yarded in up there at Red Team. That's an experience I'll never forget. And then worked very closely with the Rangers and became good friends, and still good friends today with most of those guys. We're almost seamless as an organization. Yeah.
Well, when you go through something, especially like that conflict, you're certainly bonded forever.
And you find out that they're the same guys that you are, and they just stood in a different line.
Yeah.
You know,
So you got on the ground quite a bit of time before October 3rd.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact date, but I want to say it was sometime in July. I think we landed over there, and we started. Initially went over to capture Muhammad Aidid, and then very shortly after we got there, we found out that he was gone. He left.
Right.
He wasn't dumb, and so we decided to hang around and go after his lieutenants and his infrastructure. Yeah, and so we were running out doing raids to capture his key people.
What was your first impression of Mogadishu and kind of the...
So it was a dump, right? I mean, obviously the city was a dump. You could tell at one time it had been a beautiful, beautiful city. Right there.
But I mean, you'd been in some other conflicts that were, nasty situations, you know, fighting against, a variety of skilled or unskilled people.
Yeah.
You landed there, you get on the ground, you get in the thick of stuff. Like
no organization. So if you compared it to like Beirut.
Yeah.
Beirut had factions, but at least within those factions, there were still infrastructure. There were traffic lights that worked. There were people were going about their daily life with some sort of civilized approach. So the stores were open, and in Somalia, I think it was every family for themselves. It was like just this massive
chaos.
city that no infrastructure. And I just remember thinking, if you think about what had happened previously, the terrible famine.
Yeah.
So people were still just starving to death, and really the reason we were there was they were trying to get food to the populace, but these gangs were taking the food and basically using it as power.
Yeah.
And so we went down to make sure that, hey, look, we've got to take out a couple of these leaders so that we can at least get the food
flowing.
The UN guys can deliver it without getting ambushed.
Right.
And so, of course, again, he had left, and we went after his infrastructure, and we were doing fairly frequent missions to capture some of his key leaders, like Omar Salad, League Legato, who was I can't remember the other guys.
But these were some bad dudes.
Bad dudes.
Really bad dudes in a bad area.
Bad dudes.
It had to have felt different, walking around and operating, on those streets in that area than anywhere you'd been before.
Yeah, they were unorganized, but there were a lot of them.
Right.
And they were heavily armed.
And unpredictable.
Unpredictable, but heavily armed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't going to engage you. They were, decisively engage you. They were going to try to take advantage of you and then run.
Yeah.
And hoping that would deter you from doing what you came here to do.
Right.
And one of the things that we would do is we put together this package to where we could deploy very quickly. So within a few minutes, we could have everybody airborne and be on our target. Guys were sleeping in their gear, and we had a drill down to where we could
constant state of readiness.
Constant state of readiness. We could gear up and go and be on, rotors turning, and we would go put together a plan as team leaders in the TOC, and then we would run out to the aircraft and meet our team on the bird and brief that plan on the aircraft.
Right.
And then a lot of times we'd be airborne and briefing that plan. Now here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We'd draw it on a dry erase board.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, you see this? This is what we're doing.
But as a result of that, I mean, and also because you're working with a combination of forces, a lot of that was you had a rough plan, but there's a lot of fluidity.
Yes.
To that.
Yeah, you had to be able to
improvise,
understand the intent of the mission, and then carry that out. And we got really good at it. And
things have gone pretty smooth.
Things had gone really well. And October 3rd, things were going really well. So we launched in the afternoon of October 3rd, and it was on a Sunday. And
so October 3rd, to you, I mean, it felt like another routine op.
It did. And we were starting to, at that point, things had kind of stalled on us. And we were starting to talk about maybe redeploying back to Bragg, because, you know, he was gone, and
You'd already caught some bad guys.
And then this popped up, and we'd had several what I call false alarms, where you'd go in, you'd get all spun up, and nothing would happen. So we all kind of went in that day looking at this and thinking 50-50, you know, but 90% chance. It went from like 90% chance not going to happen to very quickly, well, maybe 75% is going to happen, to like 50-50. Maybe this thing's going to go to like, it's going. And it went really smooth. I mean, we went in.
So the entry was pretty straightforward.
The entry was really a couple of little hiccups here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And it was over within a few minutes. And we went in. They were all textbook. Yeah. We captured the guys. They were all sitting around in a meeting when we got them. And
just as you thought.
Just like we thought. And then we started getting ready to move off the target. And the first little glitch, I wouldn't say a little glitch, it was a pretty big glitch. We had one of our Rangers fall off of a fast rope. Yeah. And really high. I mean, he fell off 60, 70 feet off of a fast rope. And it seriously injured him. Yeah, long bad fall. And right in the middle of the street. And we had, you know, we didn't receive any gunfire in the target. They surrendered pretty quickly. But the longer you stay on the target, people are telling everybody. It attracts a ton of attention. They're yelling, hey, you know, they're telling their neighbors are telling their, and
kicking up dust.
They're reacting, right? And so they're starting to, the bad guys are starting to close and converge on the target. And so what would have normally been an exfil off, now we have a guy that fell off, and now we got to package him and kind of get him ready for a medevac. And the volume of fire started to increase as we sit there and package him.
And at the starting point, you're rooftop, and he's down on the street.
Correct. Yeah, we'd all kind of consolidated up on the roof of this target building. And then, of course, as these guys the bad guys are converging on the target, we start to bring assets in for close air support. So we're bringing in helicopters that are engaging with rockets and miniguns. And they're getting closer and closer to the target, and there's more frequent.
And you've still got one of your guys down on the street.
Yep. And then we've got a vehicle convoy that's coming in to pick up the prisoners and move them out. So we're managing that. But the real take-home message was that our time on target was just exponentially, doubling.
Was the original plan to exfil from the roof?
We were going to move to an off-site, a block away, get on a helicopter and leave. But we would have been able to do that
from the ground. Yeah, with the prisoners.
We were going to put the prisoners on vehicles, have them roll out. So
the plan was always to go to the ground, move them into vehicles,
move them to the vehicles, get them rolling, and then us move off-site and leave.
Yeah, and
could have done that in a few minutes. It was
straightforward.
Had things gone the way we wanted them to go, that's what would have happened. And then, you're dealing with a casualty, and then you're really trying to support the team on the ground with the aircraft. And we're on the roof, and the helicopter Super 6-1 got hit, and we saw that go in.
And was that the first? I mean, copters have been shot at with RPGs, but they'd never had a hit.
Never been hit, and having shot a lot of RPGs at moving targets, it was hard for me to hit a vehicle going more than 15 miles an hour broadside from 50 meters away. That's a hard shot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
winning the lottery.
If somebody had told me, hey, could you hit an aircraft going at 90 knots from 500 meters away, I'd go, I had not a chance in hell, right? And but I guess if you get enough chances,
you get lucky.
Sooner or later you're going to get it, right? And so, but they were doing what they had to do. They were doing gun runs on bad guys that greatly outnumbered us.
Trying to hold them back.
Trying to keep them off. Yep.
So you remember obviously the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It got hit.
Yep. I was like, because now this is not going to be a short day. We're going to get over there, do some work and get
And your team was how many guys at that time on task?
4 counting me.
Four guys.
4 guys. My team. So there were 4 assault teams. Each one of them had 4, and that was limited by the capacity of the Little Bird.
Yeah.
You could put 2 guys on each side.
So the initial direct action was 16 guys.
16 plus the Ranger blocking position. So I mean, for a swag, probably 100 guys total on the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
Within proximity.
Yeah. So you'd have at each corner, you'd have a Black Hawk full of Rangers with cruiser M60 machine guns sitting there, blocking guys. And then outside that, the aircraft supporting those blocking positions.
In outer perimeter.
Insulating the target
Yep.
from the bad guys. So when that bird went down, it went down outside that perimeter. So they was beyond the blocking position. And of course, at that point, I was my ground force commander was a young captain named Scott Miller, awesome guy, still friends today. Ended up being a 4-star general and retired recently, but he was an amazing young officer. Came out of the Ranger Battalion and had just recently, been in Delta. And we sent the prisoners home on the vehicles, which is a whole nother story. And then we put together our team and started moving with Rangers and Delta guys, everybody towards the crash site to take care of the guys, either recover the dead and wounded and get that aircraft burned and get out of there. And it's difficult we could see where it went down from the top of the building, but once you get at ground level, it's a different story trying to find it. And it was less than a mile away. And we were trying to find the aircraft, and we knew we were close to it, but we were stopping and taking directions from the command and control bird. And so we'd be in this fire and maneuver mode, and then we would get to a point where we were trying to pinpoint the aircraft, and they would say, okay, 500 meters further up this way and then turn right. It was confusing because they were also talking to a ground vehicle force. And we stopped. And once
but at that point, so things have definitely escalated. Adrenaline's high.
Yep.
The whiteboard plan's out the window.
Yep.
But things are still within. You feel like you're still in control of the situation.
Yep. And never felt like we were losing.
Yeah.
And but the volume of fire was increasing, and the number of bad guys was obviously increasing. And then we stopped, and when we stopped at about, I want to say, a couple hundred meters south of that aircraft, still not knowing exactly where it was, but we knew we were close, we took our first casualties, real casualties. And we had a couple of fatalities, several wounded, and one exchange. And then we pulled in off the street into a building and occupied that building and established a casualty collection point where we were treating wounded.
Yeah.
And we still had other elements that were moving, right? We still had blocking positions that were trying to come in and get in position. And one of the other problems is we didn't exactly know where everybody was, so you had to be careful, take extra care when you were engaging these distant targets, because they could very well be friendly. So they were bad guys were kind of between us, right?
Yeah.
So you're hoping, okay, I'm going to shoot these bad guys, but make sure that you're not
crossfire
and all that stuff. And
so it became really the worst of an urban combat situation, because you don't know what window or rooftop or doorway a bad guy's in, and just because they're not there, 30 seconds later they may be.
Right.
And you don't know which one of your good guys is going to come around the corner facing you. It's very, very fluid.
Yeah, it was got confusing. We established that casualty collection point, and then we took the people that weren't wounded and we started to reset combined teams. So we would have half a team mixed with another half of a team and say, okay, now we're a whole complete team, and start to reconsolidate. And eventually fought our way up to that aircraft, after a couple of hours of trying to reconstitute. And while that had been happening, they had put a SAR team in. The SAR bird, Dan Gelado was flying that bird, put the SAR team in, consisted of Rangers and a few of our guys. And every one of them, I think, was wounded on the crash site, fighting to keep them off. Very heroic story in and of itself. And then we finally linked up with those guys, and
so you finally made contact with crash site.
we did.
And
Yeah.
and you know, what do you remember feeling when you first made contact?
It was close to midnight by this time now, pitch black. Got there, and the Starbird had encountered a problem that they were going to recover the bodies and the wounded, because there were survivors on that crash site. But one of the pilots was basically buried underneath the wreckage, and they didn't want to leave him. So they had gone in with their quickie saws and their recovery tools and tried to, the best they could, to get him out of that wreckage, but couldn't do it. I mean, he was really buried under it. And so we went to work continuing their efforts of trying to get him out of there. And it really took at some point.
So your time on task there at the crash site felt like days.
Yeah, we were there all night, and finally.
And are you still taking fire, or had things calmed down?
No, we were taking fire and casualties. And so the longer we stayed there, the worse it got. And finally, the next morning, one of our former commanders showed up with a hodgepodge.
And are you able to get resupplied at this point? So ammo and everything is...
They were flying in and dropping rucksacks of ammo out of the Black Hawk. So they'd fly in, kick the bundle, and then fly off and get another one. Right. And I just remember the little birds from Task Force 160th doing gun run after gun run after gun run, danger close with rockets and miniguns. And I was just amazed at what those guys were able to do with a helicopter. I was thinking, man, even to this day I think about it and go, man, they were just amazing group of guys.
Yeah, the courage of those pilots to
do that and keep doing it.
To stay in the fight.
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
They would go back, drop an empty bird off, get into a bird. They would have a crew would have a rotors turning on another bird. They would jump right out of one seat into the other, fly back, do their gun run. They would reload the other bird. They'd come back and just flip birds. And it was just amazing.
So the whole station at this point is just everybody is on task.
Yeah. And meanwhile, I wasn't on it, but the vehicular convoy with the prisoners was going through their own hell.
Right.
They were going through ambush after ambush after ambush, and I mean, I wasn't there, so I won't tell their story, but it's one of the greatest heroic things in the history of the U.S. military.
Yep.
We finally managed to get the pilot out, and then loaded our dead, wounded onto the armored vehicles that had come in overnight, and then started our rollout home, which became known as the Mogadishu Mile. And we rolled out, got back to the Paki Stadium, and it was then I realized on foot. And I looked around the stadium, and the magnitude of it stood out, because when you're in it, you're thinking about your 1 meter of ground. But when I got back, I saw, just wounded guys everywhere, vehicles that were, had been shot to pieces. I saw 10th Mountain guys from the Ranger Battalion, unit members, and I was just like, look at this, and it was just baffling, the scale of what had happened. And they came up and said, hey, get ready, we got another bird down. And I went, what are you talking about?
So you're at the stadium at this point, you're like, holy shit, I lived.
Yep.
Like, we're okay, like, check, we're good now. And you're like, what?
They're going to get everybody get ready. We're getting on the helos, we're going back to the hangar, we're going to get reloaded, and we're going to go find these other guys. And we were like, what other bird? And we had no idea that another aircraft had gone down up to that point.
And how far away was that?
It wasn't very far, but it was in the opposite direction of the first one, so it was probably...
So it wasn't backtracking through what you'd just been through?
Mm-mm. It was, so if you imagine a target building...
triangle.
And then you had, and then you had one that was the northernmost crash site and one that was on the opposite side of it. But we were looking at each other going, what helo? What are we talking about? And so we went back to the hangar, geared up, and then
went back out.
Went back out looking for it, and then, of course, it turned into... by the time we found it, there was nobody there. They had taken a prisoner, Mike Durant. Right. Everybody else on that bird was dead, but there were no bodies on the site. They had taken him off and mutilated him and all that stuff. But after a few days... So
what were you thinking? At this point, you're just mentally and physically, you got to be on autopilot.
Yeah, and you're angry. And you're like, okay, now it's a
fight.
Now we're not going to go back in nice next time. And they negotiated the release of Mike Durant, and then shortly after we redeployed back to Bragg. So it was it in a nutshell.
So you got Mike back, and you're back on station before you go to Bragg. How much time passes before you're heading back to Bragg?
After Mike Durant comes back, about a week.
Yeah,
about a week if I remember right.
So you're sitting around base before you're going back home for a week.
In Mogadishu. Yeah, we're sitting in the hangar.
What was that week like?
It was very somber, right? And I remember, of course, we're doing a lot of after action reviews, like what happened, what can we do better? Because at some point you're thinking, okay, while we're here, we're not gone yet, but we could go right back out there and do it again. But we're rehearsing.
How many men were lost?
We lost 6. There were 19 total. 19 total fatalities on October 3rd, which is why we have the Gothic Serpent cigar with 19 stars on it. But 6 from the unit. I think we had 6 from the Ranger Battalion, and then couple Task Force 160th guys, and then 10th Mountain as well.
Yeah.
But heroic group of guys. Yeah.
It absolutely goes down as one of those things I hope nobody ever forgets in the history of America.
Yeah, I mean, you don't realize it at the time because you're still trying to take it all in, but you had no idea that it would have the impact that it had on the Army. Changed. And the silver lining of it was that it prepared. The Army readjusted their training and their gear and the way they did things, and it prepared them for things to come that they would see in the global war on terror.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, for 20 years, we entered that with I think a whole lot more experience and intel as a result of Somalia.
Yeah.
You guys really set the groundwork for, I think, saving a lot of soldiers' lives and preparing and equipping them for what they faced in the Middle East for a long time.
Yeah.
So holy cow, that's so you get back to Bragg, and how did that change you?
Obviously, each one of those guys was a personal loss, right?
Yeah.
But the unit, of course, we refocused the way we trained, but they picked up and kept moving. I mean, and moved right into the next problem set. It was, which is what they do.
And psychologically too, I mean, there's no greater fighting force in the world, right? And after you go out on a number of engagements successfully, because of your training, because of the teamwork, because you're fighting for your brothers in a greater cause, there almost has to be a small feeling of invincibility.
Sure.
And that experience, was probably a bit humbling.
Yeah, it definitely was. You realize that you're 50% of what happens on the battlefield. The other 50% is the enemy, right? And they bring their plan too. And it may be a shitty plan, but it has effect on what's going to happen to you. So if you look at 2 football teams that play, you may have a good one and a bad one, but the other team you still got to beat them, right? And so it caused us to really think about what we did.
Yeah.
But I really don't know that we would have made it through that had we not been as prepared as we were. We were very well prepared going in. We were trained with best training, no expense spared, the best soldiers in the world, the best gear. I mean, and we made it through it. And we did not just one mission that day. There were several missions. There was a capture mission. There was a SAR mission. There was a couple of SAR missions. There were medevacs. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on, and that particular task force handled it as well as any unit
Absolutely.
could. I mean, there were a lot of things we did wrong, for sure. I mean, and I like we talked about the other day. I don't want to hear about the things that went right, because that's not something we learn from. We did a lot of things wrong, and myself included. There were ground up stuff that I look back on. We're not going to do that again. Like going in the middle of the day, thinking I don't need nods. I'm only going to be there 30 minutes, right? You might not be there 30. You might be there for a couple of days. So take those MBGs with you, because when night comes, it's a big advantage.
Right.
Right. Especially if you've trained with them.
Yeah.
Right. But if you don't have them, then you're on equal footing with them, with the exception that they know the terrain, they know the neighborhood, And so little things like that you know, as a leader, that I could, if I could go back and change, sure I would. I made a lot of mistakes, and it made me a better person. It made me a better soldier.
You know, it's one of the things I admire about you most, Norm, is, you know, your, you know, not just your humility and you know, the fact that, you know, if there ever was an American hero, you embody it in every possible way. But the fact that you're so open and transparent about that, and especially, you know, like at a time like this in America, you know, I think in an era of participation trophies and the expectation that, you know, everybody's flawless and nobody makes mistakes, and, you know, it's just such a fallacy, right? You know, I think, you know, I tell everybody, I mean, I've made a million mistakes. Like, it probably, you know, millions. I celebrate it, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to make life-changing mistakes. I don't want to make the same mistake twice, but, you know, I only learned the hard way.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think failure is just an opportunity to grow. You know, I mean, you can, if you let it be. Well, you can pick yourself up and go, I'm going to keep on learning and keep on trying, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to come back better than I was before. Not only technically better, but emotionally better, a better person. You know, and all those lessons were learned, you know, in Somalia.
Well, I think, I mean, there's just so many universally applicable lessons to be learned from, you know, what you say and, you know, what you share, that, you know, I think your approach, your mindset of, you know, of constantly learning, you know, being transparent about what you have learned from things and therefore applying that to future, you know, whatever it is you do, you know, is a lesson that, you know, honestly, I think every kid in America, every kid globally should, you know, be taught and pounded in, you know, more than algebra. You know, if you're going to set kids up for success, you know, teach them how to courageously fail.
Sure.
And learn, you know, from those mistakes.
Don't be afraid of it.
For their whole life.
Yeah, don't be afraid of it. You know, if you're out there pushing the limit to any degree, you're gonna fail. You're gonna have good days and bad days, and the bad days really define you as a person, right?
Well, how you handle the bad days, right?
Yeah, how you deal with it, and you know, do you let it make you a better person, or do you let it cripple you as a person? And it's really a great opportunity anytime you encounter adversity of any type in any facet of your life. It's an opportunity to become a better person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for the things that happened to me.
Yeah.
You know, throughout my life, not only in the Army, but the things that you the struggles you go through as a child in growing up and becoming an adult, things that you look at a time and go, why is this happening to me?
Right.
And then as an adult, you go, well, I'm glad it happened to me.
Right.
Thankful for it.
Yeah.
It made me better. And you know, it's really just training you for something different, something better.